All right now, good morning, good morning. This is Granny Appleseed here. Just got a letter from my granddaughter, Sydney Appleseed, and it turns out that she's getting herself a PhD just like I did out there at the CIIS Institute in San Francisco. She's getting her doctorate degree in transformative studies, and it looks like she needs to interview somebody who's done something amazing. Because I came up with the Awesome Dude Day, actually, you know what I'm saying? It's all world renowned now, but it was actually Granny Appleseed that started Awesome Dude Day. So she got a few questions she wants to ask me, about 6 questions, and I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can answer them. You ready? Let's do this. All right. So the first question is, what are your personal developments intellectually and otherwise? Now, Granny gonna go ahead and tell you the truth. It turns out I got held back in the 2nd grade. Okay, I barely graduated high school. I was not a good student. Just wasn't paying no kind of attention. I just didn't really care all that much. And I actually had a high school counselor tell me I wasn't college material. You know what I'm saying? It was like that. So I think what kind of did it was at some point I just decided I wanted to do something better for myself and reach a little bit further than myself. And I always knew deep down inside I had something more than what they were seeing. So it's kind of like, what would I say? I would say I'm probably like a lifelong learner, kind of one of those old school Gardner people, you know what I'm saying? Howard Gardner. So he was all about the 9 intelligences. Well, now it's a million intelligence. I think it started off with 8. I'm not entirely sure. It just keeps on growing. But basically what he decided was people had all different kinds of ways of learning and understanding information, which Granny was really about. So here's a quote I have here. Essentially, what Howard Gardner was off up into was cognitive research, was basically research of the mind and how it actually works. And so students possess different kinds of minds and therefore learn, remember, perform, and understand in different ways. And once Granny found out about that, oh no, you need to know, school was on for me. Once I knew that it really wasn't just something just wrong with me, I was just different, and everybody is different. That was it, and there was no stopping Granny after that. I was just a learning machine. To this day, I'm still learning things. Question number 2. What are the main themes, questions, and passions that drove you? Now, I will have to tell you something, really, it kind of goes back to when I kind of just first got here all together. So my grandmother actually died 3 days before I was born. One of the last things she said to my mama was, hurry up and have that baby. So life has its own way of doing things. But literally on the ride home from his mother's funeral, my father picked me and my mother up from the hospital. That's how I got started. On the flip side, on my mama's side, it looks like, I think it was my mom's aunt. Yeah, my mom's aunt. She was having an anniversary party, so everybody came out from Kansas. That's where my mom's people are from. Came out from Kansas to celebrate this anniversary, and during the party, my mom went into labor. So while she went into labor, everybody went to the hospital, and the whole party went to the hospital, and the next thing you know, I'm the party. So literally, I was born during a party. So I would say, like, just even understanding the circumstances of which I was born under was really part of my passion in understanding how I wanted to go about life and keeping the momentum actually that I kind of came here with. So what I would say is, on another level, the quotation I would say is based on one of my professors, Montori. As a matter of fact, the inquiry becomes both producer and product. The inquiry is also a process of self-inquiry and self-creation. So basically, as I began to understand myself and being that person who was kind of like the hope, sort of, in a really tough or turbulent time, the more I started to understand what I was just kind of comfortable in my space and what I was used to operating in, and how to kind of be a little bit more efficient, because that's the space I was born into and I was comfortable in it. So I don't mind rolling up my sleeves and doing the dirty work and kind of just the impossible, where it seems like it's just nothing good coming. Granny still be seeing something good coming. Well, I think my wig falling off. Is it falling off? Is it? Is the camera on? Oh, the camera's on. All right. Okay. Sorry about that now. All right. Granny is back. Granny's back. Okay. So question number 3. What people, ideas, and events inspired, challenged, or motivated you? You know, it's interesting. A friend of mine who I went to high school with had a son. This was way back, about 2017, 18, somewhere around there. And a couple of months after her son graduated high school, beautiful man, just had everything going for him, extended family working together, just all kind of love, a beautiful future, just money, resources, and the whole nine. 2 months after he graduated high school, do you know he committed suicide? He did. And around that time, a bunch of young folk were committing suicide. It was just a lot of madness going on in general. And I think I woke up after this young man, Chase, that's his name, committed suicide, took his own life. And I said to myself, wait a minute, these young folk are disappearing. Our babies are disappearing. We need to do something about this. And from that point on, I just jumped knee deep into whatever I could do to influence in the future, to at least let them know what I would have told this young man if I had had the opportunity to tell him what I wanted to, which is, you are important, you are loved, you're important to me, you are seen, and no matter where you go, I'm going to be part of you, and you going to be part of me. We going to take that with each other. You just not just here, just floating out here by yourself. You belong to somebody. And in the meantime, I belong to somebody too. That's what I wanted to tell him, you know. So the quote I say I would have with that one is essentially what Wynton Marsalis said in the book that he had, Letters from the Road, on the road to musicians, other musicians, young jazz musician, something like that. I'm sorry, you know, granny getting a little bit older, you know. But essentially what Marsalis said was, he said, look at here, don't just sit around and wait for something to happen. That same something is waiting on you. You know something, when I read that, I said to myself, that's exactly what I needed to hear, and that's what it was about. So whatever it was with the whole Chase situation just really told me to like step into action and stop waiting for something else to come and fix it, and to get in there and do the best I can with every last breath I had to make it positive. You know why? Because it was a whole bunch of things, especially at that time, using every last breath they had and everybody else had to do something negative. So Granny said, that's it. I put my foot down. I said, that's it. I'm going to live every single day for the rest of my life, letting these young folk and anybody else know who will listen to me that I care about you, and I see you, and you matter to me. That's what motivated me, and I've been going ever since. What direction has your work and life taken you? You know, it was actually my brother. Ooh, we used to get into so many arguments. Good Lord. Oh, Lord have mercy. This was back when it was just all kind of politics was crazy, you know. It was just abortion rights, women's rights, men's rights, and guns rights, and dogs rights, and cats rights, and everybody. It was just rights and craziness all around, but nobody was right. And nobody ever felt like they had nothing really either. So I would get tired of arguing with this man about, specifically about women's issues when he wasn't a woman, you know what I'm saying? And a couple of times I just got into the most just furious, just family fights with this man. And I finally got to the point where I kind of just wanted to stop fighting with him. But I really didn't know how to, because he's getting on my nerves with his philosophy, because it was whack as far as I was concerned. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't until, because back then, Granny was teaching sometimes, substitute teaching, and it wasn't until I went to maybe about a year or two after me and my brother's last big blowout. This was a long time ago, you know, it's 30, 40 years ago. But way back then, we had this big old blowout, and it was maybe about a year or two later, I was substitute teaching a student who was a Latino student, a whole different age range in a whole different part of the country. And I looked up and he was saying some of the same stuff my brother was saying, but this time, maybe because he was my brother and I wasn't all heated up, I probably hadn't had some of that vodka either because I was teaching, you know what I'm saying? So, well, you know, with my brother, I had to have a drink just to deal with that situation in the first place. But anyway, Granny don't do that no more. But anyway, so when I was at school and listening to this young man, it was something about what he was talking about that was exactly the same as what my brother was talking about verbatim. And I listened a little bit closer, and what I realized was that they felt left out somehow. And somehow them feeling left out kind of led them to, I would say, probably thinking not awesome thoughts, you know what I'm saying? Or engaging in just like not the best, most well-rounded ways of thinking, and altogether that's about all I had, you know, from real pure D ignorance to like, you know, moderate ignorance. So what it caused me to want to do is basically the same thing I was saying about the young man before Chase. It made me just really want them to know and find a way to let them know that I listen to them, I care about them, and they're important. You ain't got to go out there and act out. You understand what I'm saying? You ain't got to go out there and rape a woman or do something bad to a woman to prove that you're a man. How about you could prove you're a man by doing something awesome, get celebrated for doing something awesome, and then you want to get motivated and stay motivated to do awesome things. And it turned out it worked. Just that simple. All we had to do was tell them how important they were and how proud of them we were of them on the regular, and they started to see that beauty within themselves. So here's a quote I have off of that one. Essentially, what that whole situation allowed me to do was to find my intrinsic motivation to literally, which literally means that of which motivates me from within. And I found from that situation that happiness and joy and really just getting along with these young men and wanting to understand them and also not wanting to see them in pain was part of my intrinsic motivation. Actually, that was it. Also, I want to say I had a quote, a really good quote of Igor Stravinsky. You know that man. He was quoted as saying in Creators on Creating, it says here, in order to create, there must be a dynamic force. And what force greater than love? And I'm going to tell you something, that's real talk right there. It was really the love that I had for my brother and the love I had for this other young man and students in general and just the youth. And really the love I have for myself and what impact I have and what I'm going to make on this planet. That really caused me to just step and say, you know what I'm saying? Let's just get into it and do it and don't look back. I'm not here to suffer. The sun come up every morning all by itself. This world ain't got to be as difficult as people trying to make it be. I mean, it rain by itself. Basically, we make it more difficult. So how about this? Why don't we stop doing that? And I start with myself. And I start with myself by just starting off with what's positive, what's beautiful, and what's right in front of me. And you know what I noticed? It's kind of like if I look like this all the time, or I look up all the time, I just start looking up. The next thing you know, somebody next to me looking up, and somebody next to me looking up, and we all looking up. I don't want to look up too high because my wig might fall off. I think it's coming off, but you know what I'm saying. You get the principle. The point is, the more you start looking in a certain direction, other people start looking that direction too. And that's exactly what made the difference right there. Question number 5, it says, what are some of your greatest achievements, creations, and surprises? I would say probably my greatest surprise is the resilience, beauty, and love of humanity. It's interesting. It's kind of like forces have to work really hard against that to make anything to the opposite of that happen, basically. You know what I'm saying? Because by nature, I think just human beings really are amazing and get along very well with each other. It's not until we start feeling threatened as individuals, as groups, cultures, nations, it doesn't matter. However we choose to identify ourselves, that the real problem, I think, with humanity and other humans start to come along. With that being said, I would say probably one of my greatest achievements, or my greatest achievement besides my awesome kids, which basically led down to you, would be Awesome Dude Day. And the reason that I would say that that was one of my greatest achievements is because I decided to take a problem, because at that time, this is around 2018, 19, somewhere around there, 17, it was just, men were just getting a really bad rap, and there was really no way of being able to look at a positive man and have him as an idol. You know what I'm saying? There wasn't anything being presented like that. All the stuff that was being presented was either inaccessible or negative. Pretty much, that was about it. So what Granny decided to do was to celebrate the everyday awesomeness of everyday dudes. That's it. You don't have to be anything, doing anything super profound per se. It's just awesome relative to who you are and where you are. And that's one thing. Awesome is a very individual thing. So once upon a time, say for instance, my stepdad, he went through and ended up having diabetes. So he had his leg, ended up having to be amputated. Once upon a time, him tying up his shoes was no big deal at all. As he got older and only had one leg and it was hard for him to bend down, tying up one shoe was awesome. That's an awesome dude. He kept going. He learned how to breathe. He learned how to tie his own shoe. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about. Just the everyday awesomeness. And what I find is, once again, the more you keep looking in those directions, the more other people start looking in those directions and want to be in those directions. It's kind of an amazing thing. So with that being said, let me see here. I would say, like Pope, I believe that the creation's beginning, middle, and end are happening simultaneously and constantly. I would say that because even though it started off as Awesome Dude Day, it ended up branching out into now what we now know as the Awesome Movement, right? And just kind of took over the whole wave and the whole planet, because everything deserves to be appreciated for the awesomeness of itself. Every animal, person, plant, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's there and it's jamming or it's trying to, it's awesome. Appreciate it, respect it, tell it that, and that encourages it to do better and even more awesome. And it turns out it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And look around, you see the difference in the world from what it was, at least based on history and what you read about, and what it is today. Some of that has to do with some awesomeness. Go, Granny. Whew, okay, we down to the last question. Here we go. Question number 6. What obstacles did you have to overcome, and how did you approach them? I would say the first obstacle I had to overcome was defining the word dude and what I meant by dude. My very first intensive, one of my professors asked me what my inquiry was about, and I said Awesome Dude Day, and he didn't know what I was talking about. And although it hurt my feelings, because believe me, it hurt my feelings, it made me rethink it, go back to the drawing board, and really get specific as to what I was describing. So I realized that when I'm describing a dude, what I was basically saying is the masculine. The masculine, male, guy, dude, however you choose, whatever word you choose to use, ultimately what I'm doing is describing the masculine. What I found out, however, is that dude meant something very different depending on who I was talking to. And so part of what my job was, responsibility was to define what I specifically meant by dude. So it turns out my professor was part of a generation where dude meant, yeah, dude is a little more bebop and just kind of admit a little more cool, I would say. Where for me, it just meant somebody who was masculine or masculine identified. That's the other thing too, is I gave other people the room to identify themselves as masculine or a dude. That wasn't my job. So I would say that was my first obstacle. My second obstacle was similar to my third, which I would say is probably was a woman doing what other men saw as, or other people saw as male work, or working with men to actually help them, to heal them. Eventually, I got all these beautiful, awesome men involved who were able to take it over Awesome Dude Day. But initially, it just started off with little old me, really just wanting to reach out to my brother and taking it on, this challenge on, to reach out to these men and to tell them beautiful things from as much of an objective, non-biased standpoint as possible. Let's put it that way. Which was kind of hard to do for a man to do at that time for themselves. It just depended on what they were and where they were coming from. It may not have been received quite as openly. But with me being a woman, part of it were I definitely had obstacles against myself, and at the same time, I think it opened the door for me because people didn't really expect it. And they were kind of like, well, if she's saying these dudes are awesome, then they must be awesome. Because I really didn't have anything to gain from that except for appreciating their awesomeness. I would say on the same token, me being a black woman healing a world issue, because male and female, or masculine and feminine, is essentially a world issue. That's not even just a one-person issue or ethnicity issue. That's just where there's men and women. And so a lot of people had a hard time with an African American woman stepping across those boundaries and those borderlands, as I would say in my Self and Society class that I used to take, off into those borderlands and basically stepping across those boundaries and just saying, hey, I don't care what it is. It's about the love, and the violence has to stop. I mean, at that time, too, you got to remember, they were literally abducting women left and right, girls left and right. You had human slave trades. You had all kind of just everything you can imagine. Girls were at the top of the list and just disappearing left and right, along with kids and everybody else. But girls were at the top of the list. And that was the other thing that made me really address that issue, because I said to myself, okay, well, somebody's got to do something about that too. Now, see here, my homie over here, her son killed himself, and then the girls over here get took, they killed, where's the youth? You know what I'm saying? That's now you see what I'm saying. So I just got involved, and I decided I didn't care what anybody was talking about. I didn't care what I looked like. I didn't care how old I was, what color I was. All that mattered was what I was doing. And what I was doing was making sure that each person, as much as possible, knew that they had a purpose and they were loved in this world. That's what I'm talking about. They have value. And with that being said, it just brought down the crime rate and everything else because people didn't have to act out like they used to. They get praised for doing something positive. Let me tell you something. It doesn't matter what kind of animal it is. Every single thing, plant, anything, needs love and attention. It's going to get it one way or another. Either you're going to give it something positive, or you're going to give it something negative, or you're not going to give it anything at all, which is just as bad as something negative. So I decided to take the bull by the horn, so to speak, and give it something positive. And from that, build upon that. You see, if things start to look for beautiful things, that'll be all they see. And when you see those things and those things see you, you know that you're a beautiful thing, and you want them or those things to see you that way all the time. Next thing you know, you're being beautiful all the time so that those things can see you as beautiful all the time. It's the same premise. So with that being said, I would say my closing statement or quote is that I have no responsibility to be like they expect me to be. It's their mistake, not my failing, which is what Kathy Johnson said in chapter 7, Lost in the Woods, and Creators on Creating. It was a really wonderful interview, and I'm a nature person. So with that being said, it's the same kind of thing. once I gave myself permission to do me the way I wanted to do me and to go about life the way I wanted to, there was no stopping me. That was it. And what works best for me is love, kindness, sharing. I like chaos, but I like chaos that gets you somewhere. I don't like useless chaos and madness, and it's just not really my nature. So with that being said, I just followed my nature because I'm a nature person. All right, well, that's about all I got. I really appreciate you, like I said, allowing me to tell my story, asking me to interview, asking me to be interviewed, and asking to interview me. And I'm honored. And hopefully it'll make a difference in the world. Thank you. Take care.